Halo KLOPers, sekarang kita lagi ada di Christine Yellow Yerde Gallery. Kita lihat yuk gimana isinya. Di sini lagi ada solo exhibition dari seniman Indonesia Sinta Tantra. Nah, ini lukisan-lukisannya. Mau tahu nanti gimana arti dari lukisan-lukisan ini dan mau kenalan lanjut dengan Mbak Sinta Tantra, nanti kita bahas di episode KLOP kali ini. Halo, kembali lagi di KLOP KBRI London Podcast. Episode hari ini bersama saya Ririn dan saya sekarang lagi berada di galeri Christine Yellow Yerde. Is that how you pronounce it? Okay, exactly. Thank you. So we're here with Sinta Tantra.
So my name's Sinta Tantra. I'm an artist living and working in between London and Bali, Indonesia. I would call myself a painter, but a painter working on an architectural scale. So quite often you could see my work in public areas. Sometimes they're big bridges, buildings, floors, cityscapes. But at other times I also exhibit in gallery spaces such as this one.
Okay, so you, I read that you often associate with yourself before the gallery with more large-scale projects and murals, and I heard the Canary Wharf Bridge is one of your most renowned.
Yes.
You know, and how do you transition and see yourself? I mean, what are the differences when you're doing this large-scale project and the one that you do in more, you know, personal space like this?
So with the public artwork, I started off making work for outside, so ordinary, everyday people could see it on the street, and they would have direct access to the art.
Right. So it's kind of an egalitarian approach to
yes.
art. Yes.
That was when I was young, and I had like these grand ideas of what art should be and the practicality and the function of art.
Right.
But I think growing up and sort of realizing it's quite difficult to be part of the world and not part of the world. We always seem to be tied down to a kind of consumerist, capitalist society and world. So it's quite difficult to separate yourself from that totally, unless you want to live in a forest by yourself. Which doesn't sound too bad.
But
I think that's how kind of working, it enabled me to do both. I think having the gallery practice and that, I mean, in a way I was able to be more free artistically because in a public art setting, the artwork has to be incredibly functional.
Right.
It needs to have good maintenance, a bit like a building. So I think having the two is quite unique for most artists, because my practice is it's kind of run more like a design studio than like a painter's studio. So I would have teams and assistants and technicians working with me to help me realize. So
you're kind of an all-around artist. You do everything. Yeah, it's incredible. And let's talk about your latest project here. I think the audience should know that apart from we want to show all of your works, obviously, but I think here, this is your, I don't know, your solo exhibition in 2023, right? With Kristen, and the theme is Shrines of Gaiety.
Yeah, the title of the show is called Shrines of Gaiety.
Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole exhibition is based on a book that I was reading. I say book, but it's actually a short novel, and it's by a German philosopher written over 100 years ago called Paul Scherbert. And it's a bit of an abstract story and fictional, and he creates a scene and it's people having dinner outside in a garden, but the garden is in Batavia, which is the old term for Jakarta.
Yes.
And they had this wonderful idea that they were going to build a spa that healed you, but not a spa of water, but a spa of light.
Okay.
And so they decided to build it in a mine.
Okay.
And what's interesting about that, if you look at it through a post-colonial lens, this idea of what was made always comes at a cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all the sort of greatness
Right.
that you saw in empire came at both a cost to the earth and human cost. So this idea that they had of having a wonderful vision,
Yeah.
and actually there's a critique of having, sometimes when you have such a strong vision, you lose sight
Right.
of all the little things and the darker side of it.
This is inspiring. But this is, you know, as a commoners, I mean, people who don't really understand art, that's how I describe myself. I don't know nothing about it. But if you could, what would be your, in this series, in this Friends of Kate series, which one is your favorite paintings?
Favorite artwork?
Yeah.
I think it's hard to say which specific artwork. I think I'm proud and love perhaps more the journey of how you go through the exhibition.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily an artwork that I love. For me, it's also very important to create stories as you walk around. So there's a whole physicality involved. So you start off with seeing these gold paintings.
Yes.
And that's very bright, and that's probably more shrines of gaiety, like happy,
Right. Yeah.
decorative.
Yeah.
And then you get into these two other interior spaces, smaller spaces. And the paintings get darker, so they have a blue background.
Okay.
And then there's the rocks and the postcard blown up.
Right. Right.
And also the incense
The
sticks in
incense.
the film.
Yeah.
And so it goes to like another place.
Okay,
And when you look at the film that's being projected in this small room, it's a film shot in 1932, so I've edited it.
Okay.
It's a Hollywood film depicting a love story between a man and a woman. The woman is like a native from a tropical island.
Okay.
And the white man tries to save her and they fall in love. And if you look at it now, through modern eyes, it's quite racist.
Right. White savior complex.
Yeah, exactly. White savior exhibition starts off with something quite bright and shiny. And then as you progressively move into the space, it gets sort of darker, and overlaid with the film is a soundtrack of a field recording of my father's village in Bali.
Okay.
So I bring Bali quite a lot into the exhibition. And that is interesting for me because it's layering this Hollywood version of a paradise, the tropical, layered with like a real, with an actual field recording.
Right.
And when you have the two together, there's a sort of disconnect.
Yeah, this is interesting how you always, how do you identify yourself? I mean, it's always
a great question.
Yeah. How do you identify yourself? I mean, you like Indonesian or more like Londoners in this case, right? Because you spent all of your life, almost all of your growing, here in New York and here, and then but you have a Balinese descent, as you said. Your parents come from Indonesia, and you often brought your, not upbringing, but I think
my culture,
your heritage, right, into the art. But how do you actually see it, and how is it? Perhaps this is what makes your art is kind of when you say the gold representing all of the beautiful things, and then but when you get there and progressing, you see something darker. It kind of a contrasting with each other.
Yes.
Is it? So how is that?
I guess that's a bit like my childhood. And identity. I mean, I guess when we were growing up, identity was very clear. It was what your passport said.
Okay. Yeah.
Traditionally, if you are exhibiting in a gallery, they would say the name of the artist, where they were born, and the year. But I was born in New York. New York has no relationship really to my identity, I feel. So that doesn't quite work either. And I mean, I describe myself as British Balinese, but not in the sense that I'm mixed. mixed race.
Right.
Because
yeah.
I guess people assume that I am. I guess what I'm saying, these days, I think younger people are less into the whole binary structures.
Okay. Yes.
East, west, male,
Yes.
female,
Right.
self
right.
and other.
Yes.
Which is all about, this exhibition sort of
Right.
explores that. And so I think I always think of it, depends who I'm talking to when they ask me where I'm from. So if it's a Londoner asking me, I'll talk about my Balinese kind of heritage. If it's someone in Indonesia, maybe I'll talk about. So I think it's more about the human conversation that you're having. It's a bit like when I'm talking about my art.
Yeah.
You know, how do I pitch it? If I'm pitching it to like an art critic, an everyday person, someone on the street, my mother, they'll all have different levels.
Sure.
And it doesn't really matter what level you are. There's no
Right.
hierarchy.
Right.
It's just like whether you find that, how to find that connection and the universal spirit between different people. Because it's always there.
And I think this is part of why your art is quite popular. I think that people can get that connection. You know, it's by, you know, right now contemporary art. I think my understanding is more about, it's very personal, right? How you connect to the art itself, and there's, as you said, multiple interpretations of art. But you find that, you know, point where you can connect with all sort of people, which is amazing.
Yeah, well, I think that comes from being both from here and from Indonesia. So I think it's something, I think more and more people are feeling that conflict of identity and self. And that's always been a source of inspiration, but also a source of conflict is like a bad word. What's the word for like a sort of like friction within myself, especially when you're kind of growing up as a young person. Where is home? Where's better to live in, here or there? And it's like quite difficult to navigate those big questions. I think somewhere like London, it enables you to sort of move away from certain stereotypes, I think, because you're quite anonymous in the city and you can kind of build. But then at the same time, it comes at a cost of, for example, if I was in Indonesia, I'd be probably very close to my family and have 1,000 cousins nearby on speed dial.
Yes.
So I think that friction, it has a sort of insider and outsider status, which for me, I think kind of helped, I don't know, it sort of drew me to make work about that. I think when I was younger, I guess I thought it was like a burden, having to struggle this, like why do I have to deal with this? But the older I got, the sort of more I sort of saw it as a superpower, you know, being from different places.
You have a unique vantage point. I have a last question. I really don't want this conversation to end. I have so many questions.
Thank you.
You're very
It's been a
insightful. Yeah, it's very nice and to actually learn about this art. But one question to close, and this is I think this is I think very relevant to all of the artists in Indonesia, as I said earlier. So if you have one last message, wisdom or thoughts for thriving Indonesian artists or young Indonesians, what would be your, especially in creative sectors, what would be your tips for them? To be like you, as in to have this, you know, replicate the success stories of yours. So
I mean, it's interesting because I guess it's a question that gets asked of me a lot in terms of what advice you would give to artists and Indonesians, and the answer is that it always changes. My answer. But I think it's something, I mean, I guess maybe 10 years ago I would have said, oh, you have to be super professional, you have to like give you a long list of all the things that you need to be good at. And actually what you need to be good at is not necessarily being professional. I mean, that plays a role, but what you need to be good at is knowing yourself and believing in that. which sounds kind of maybe the advice that most people give.
Right.
I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have a reason, like a connection to why you make work.
Okay.
So if you kind of can somehow tap into why,
Right.
you could somehow, the creativity sort of comes across. If you can't really find out why, then you get stuck and you have the challenges. Like maybe you might be successful when you're younger, but if you don't have the skill set to like keep on tuning into what your heart wants, what your soul wants, what you feel the world needs, then it could be quite limiting.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really like it really like philosophy one-on-one conversation kind of things, you know, and type it into the artworks and how you do that. And then we often forget about this. And thank you so much for your time. With your episode. Thank you, and I hope your work will keep inspiring others. And I hope a lot of Indonesian artists will achieve the success as you. Bisa saya simpulkan dari pembicaraan kita dengan Mbak Sinta tadi, mungkin tips yang terbaik, ini agak philosophical ya, tapi this is very important, bahwa temukan your why, right? So you have to understand why, then you can keep creating things, creating art and everything that you do in your life. Jadi temukan why-nya, makanya supaya bisa tetap berkarya. Terima kasih teman-teman, sampai jumpa di episode KLOP berikutnya.